Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast, where we talk about winning in all four of the essential areas of life.
Welcome back to the Four Fires Podcast. This is Jeff Rice, and again, I'm here with my friend Zach Thomas. Zach, when he went through his 30-day ruck program, shared with me in the group that he had put together some things that he lives by when he's thinking about how he leads and protects his daughters as they're growing up and trying to find their husband, the man that God made for them. This is going to be a People Fire podcast where Zach's sharing about some things that he's doing as a father. I'm looking forward to learning from it, and hopefully you guys listening can learn from some things that Zach's doing. He's got 5 daughters and 2 sons. Zach, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be here.
Good to have you. Yeah. And I actually think I'm just going to turn it over to you unless you feel like you need some priming of the pump. But like I said, you mentioned these things in the ruck, and I just wanted to share them and capture them on camera and on audio. So walk us through what you have set in place to lead and protect your daughters.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll first throw out a disclaimer that I'm still figuring this out, right? Like, I don't profess to know it all or have it all figured out. I think that raising children is one of the most noble causes that we will ever have as men. You know, I've learned so much from Wild at Heart. I don't know, a lot of folks are, if you're familiar with that, but John Eldridge and Wild at Heart, you know, I've just been very tuned into their ministry over the years, and I just learned a lot about raising my daughters and raising my boys through that. And so, you know, I think a lot of wisdom comes with experience, and so I've got quite a bit of experience, but I'm still in the process of experiencing it. You know, with 7 children, my oldest daughter is about to be 21, and then my youngest son is 6, and everything in between. They're about 2 years apart, 5 girls and 2 boys, and it's a lot. I will say they're all different. You know, and one of the biggest things that I could share when it comes to parenting is you can't just apply this cookie cutter solution to all children. It's like, you know, and even this applies in leadership as well. You know, I say leadership is not cookie cutter. Parenting is not cookie cutter. You can't say, well, I've got a star-shaped cookie cutter, and I'm just going to stamp that on every single child, or I'm going to stamp that on every single person. I think that's a lazy form of leadership or a lazy form of parenting. You've got to study your children. You've got to study their hearts. One of the metaphors that I use a lot of times to talk about this is that, like, I feel like I'm still in college, and I've got 8 classes. And my curriculum is 8 classes. My main class that if I fail it, I fail out of college, and that's my wife, Christy. And I've got to study her heart, and I've got to learn what is it that, and how is it that God designed her and made her and help her become the person that God created her to be. And then each other child is another class. And so I have to look at them individually as classes, and one might be a math class, and the other one is a history class, and the other one's a foreign language. And I'm like, man, I'm lost because I just don't understand this language. And so, like, if I want to pass that class, I've got to be really intentional about studying for their hearts and who they're becoming, and really what is it and how is it that God designed them to become who they're supposed to be. And so you know, that's first and foremost. And so that's really just kind of a framework for how I think about parenting.
Never heard it framed that way.
Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a couple podcasts ago, you guys talked about the push and pull parenting, and I also have used that in my leadership journey and everything. And I jokingly sent you a text on the way down here that, like, you know, if you push too hard, you know, it's kind of like a fart, right? You know what happens after a certain phase. You're going to soil your pants, yeah. Right? And that's really how it goes in parenting. Like, if you continue to push, and you don't pull, you don't allow them the opportunity to pull from you. And really, that's like, I think Alan shared this, but that's really like setting the example for them to see. They're going to learn way more from observation And way more is going to be caught than taught. That's another colloquial term that we use a lot, but way more is caught than taught. And so that's really how I try to live my life. I want my kids to see what I'm doing, but then they're going to develop their own flavor of it, right? It's going to be, there's some certain core things that I want them to really hold on to, but then they're going to have their own version of it, just like me. In fact, and you really want to talk about daughters here, but that's one of the things that I learned very early on with my son. And he's 13, and I realized pretty early on.
This is your oldest son?
This is my oldest son.
Okay.
And that I realized pretty early on that I was trying to make him into me. And I was just stamping that cookie cutter, and I realized, like, he's different. He's a great kid, but until I learned to cultivate his uniqueness and who God made him to be and call that out, I'm hurt. In some ways I'm hurting him. I'm damaging him if I'm trying to make him into me. Mm-hmm. He's definitely going to be he's not going to be exactly like me. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until I realized that I was forcefully pushing and trying to make him into, and like I said, this was pretty early on. I mean, this was probably like 5 or 6 when it just clicked, like, wait, this kid is not.
We're different.
Yeah, we're
different.
Wired. Yeah, we're wired differently.
Are you familiar with the DISC personality profiles? Yeah. Do you use that at all? Like looking at just, my son, he's a high whatever, or my daughter, she's a high.
Yeah, I haven't really used it that much, but I am also familiar with the Enneagram.
Yep.
I mean, I'm a 3. Like off the chart.
That's the achiever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm off the chart.
I don't know those off the top of my head. But
and I'm trying to figure out what my kids are along the way. But like I said, there's all different. Mm-hmm. And so I think was a big epiphany for me, is that they're not going to be just like me. And so I've got to study them, and I've got to study their hearts and discover how is it that God made them, and how did he craft them into the unique person that they are to become? And how do I cultivate that and fuel that in them and help them become more of who God created them to be? And so that was really hard for me at first, because I wanted to create a bunch of clones, and I just realized they're not going to be carbon copies of me.
Welcome back to the Four Fires podcast. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, please go down and leave us a 5-star rating and share this episode with a friend. It really helps us get all of this Four Fires content to more men so that we can accomplish our mission of building an army of 4-dimensional men. Thanks so much. Live intentionally, and I hope you enjoy the show.
And so, getting into daughters, this is near and dear, because I've got 3 older daughters that are moving into the stage of looking for who they're supposed to spend the rest of their life with, and who is it that God created for them, and how to recognize that. And so, we do have some rules that are pretty hard set in place that I think we've kind of stumbled upon. We are raising kids in uncharted territory. Like, that's a reality. I started writing a book several years ago called Pioneer Parenting, and I haven't finished it, so it's not available. But it's just this idea that, like, the pioneers were going into uncharted territory. They didn't know what they were going to encounter. And that's kind of where we are in the parenting world right now. We're stepping into uncharted territory with technology and AI and all these things that influence our kids, and it's just not something that influenced us. Mm-hmm. But if you really just kind of take a deep breath and take a step back and say, okay, well, what are the fundamentals that we need to just really, like, non-negotiables, right?
Principles that we're not willing to fudge.
Right. The principles that will stand the test of time, right? Biblical principles, mm-hmm. Wow, what a concept. Like, use the Bible, right? Yeah. And so, but they're like extrapolating biblical principles, that's something that is pretty much a given. But, like, how do we look at the things that are unique to our time in history that we need to just kind of put some rules in place? It's kind of like thinking about, all right, not to get political here, but let's just say that there's an experimental vaccine that they're going to put out there, and it's like, well, we don't know what this thing's going to do to us, right? And so, or an experimental drug per se, And it's like, why would you jump in on a trial when you don't know what that's going to do over time, right? And so I look at technology like phones and things like that. It's like, we don't really know what this is going to do in the long run. And so we're just going to limit that exposure. And so, like, we have pretty hard set rules around technology. So our kids, which started out with our daughters, my oldest daughter, she got her phone when she was 13. And then the next daughter got hers when she was 14. The next daughter got hers when she was 15. And now my son, I said, I'm sorry, buddy, but like, you're not getting a phone till you're 16. It just keeps going up.
Yeah.
Right? We're just not going to do it. We're not going to expose you to that. Thankfully, Verizon has this gizmo watch that gives you the ability to call your child and you can kind of know where they're at, but they have zero ability to get on the internet or anything like that. I know that I survived without access to the internet until I was like, 20, right? Because it didn't exist. And so, like, I think, I want my children to, and it's not they don't have any access, but it's just very controlled access. So we homeschool, and they have, some tablets. And what's really cool is because we make them do some of their schoolwork on a tablet, they don't want to be on a tablet because they have to do schoolwork on a tablet, right? And so, we want them to have books and actually read a physical book. And, so there's just some things that we've learned, I think, stumbled upon that have been helpful for us. And so that is, again, like limiting technology. Our hard, fast rule right now is you don't get a phone until you're 16. And there's a book out there right now called The Anxious Generation, which I highly recommend. Jonathan Haidt, I think is his name. A lot of research around what phones and technology and all that and social media and stuff is doing to our children, and just like an experimental drug. We gave it to them not knowing what it would do, and now we're starting to see the results of what it did. Thankfully, like I said, we kind of stumbled upon, like, our gut just told us, hey, just don't jump into this too quickly. And so, again, those hard, fast rules of no phones until you're 16. Also, no dating until you're 16. We don't do the boyfriend-girlfriend thing. We just don't encourage that at all. In fact, I picked up my nephew last night. He was coming to stay the night with my son, and he's 13, and he's only like his second or third girlfriend. And I'm just like, okay, like, we're just...
You can't even drive to go pick her up.
Yeah.
At 13.
Like, his mom was literally, his girlfriend lives like in Rome, which is like 25, 30 minutes away. And they met at school somehow. She had to drive him over to her house, and then she was picking him up at like 10:30 at night because he was supposed to come stay the night with my son, a sleepover. But he's coming over at 10:30 at night because he's been in his girlfriend's house for 5 hours. And I'm just like, he's 13. Like, really? And so, and I just tell my kids, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, you may have a crush on somebody, but we do not do the boyfriend-girlfriend thing. Like, I'm sorry. Like, we're just not doing that. We're not going to entertain that idea. You're not mature enough to even have that. Now, did I do it as a kid? Yes. Am I okay now? There's probably some heart damage from some of that stuff, right? And so we just hard, fast rule, like no dating, no boyfriend and girlfriend.
And then even once you are 16, let's be wise about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where we get into some of the things that you asked me to share with, what kind of came out of the ruck. I have 3 older daughters who are age of dating, 16 and older. My oldest daughter will be 21 in November. She spent a year in Brazil, almost a year. While in Brazil, she met a nice young gentleman through a ministry partnership that we work with down there. And so he reached out. Well, actually, we went to, they were friends. There was no, nothing going on. And then we as a family went to Brazil. And then while in the car on the way we were going to a waterfall. His family was with us, and of course they were friends, but I knew what was coming. And so we were headed to a waterfall with his family, and my 18-year-old, who was like 16 at the time, she just was like, so obviously there's some chemistry between you two. So do we want to talk about that? And
this was her the younger sister.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then so my oldest daughter's face turns super red, and she's all embarrassed, and Pedro is his name, and he speaks extremely fluent English. His primary language is Portuguese, but he speaks 4 languages. He speaks Portuguese, English, Spanish, and French. He said, well, since you brought it up, I was going to talk to your dad about it, but I guess I need to do that now. And so in the car, we're driving to this waterfall. He's like, I'd like to date your daughter. And I'm like, okay, let's talk more about that. And so he and I had some private conversation, but for me, that is a hard, fast rule. Like, you're not dating my daughter until you come to me.
And your daughters know that.
Oh, my daughters know that.
If your daughters had a guy say, let's start dating, and they would know to say, you better go talk to my dad.
Yep. Right now, we've got a situation where my middle daughter, she's 18 now. She's been in a previous relationship with a young man. As soon as she turned 16, a guy reached out to her. When she was in public school, a guy had reached out to her from that time frame through social media and was like, hey, you're really pretty. I'd like to reconnect and that sort of thing. And so she jumped in pretty quick, but she said, well, you got to talk to my dad first. And so then he reached out to me, but I could tell this kid was just not the caliber that my daughter was.
He didn't speak 4 languages?
No. And he just wasn't the caliber that my daughter really was looking for. She was trying to make him into the person that she wanted him to be. And really, she would tell you, if she were sitting here today, her model for a man is me.
Wow.
And so she would say, like, I'm looking for that. So she was trying to kind of manipulate and make him into that person. One day she just realized, like, he's just never going to become that. And so she just broke up with him. I mean, broke his heart, just destroyed him.
Bad, but good for her.
Like, it's just never going to happen. And thankfully, she stayed pure. Like, we're very strict on, I tell all my kids, we're very open about, talking about sex and those conversations. And I'm like, look, like, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just like, you have to set rules for yourself. Like, you can't allow yourself to, be in your bedroom with your boyfriend or his bedroom, at his house. Like, that's just non-negotiable. Like, you don't do that. You don't even go in there. Like, if he wants to show you something in his bedroom, you stand in the doorway and he can point at it.
Yeah.
You just don't even walk in his room.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to kind of set those parameters and say, like, you just don't put yourself in that position. Don't allow yourself to be tempted in that place. And so, fast forward, June was 6 months that she broke up with him.
Okay.
And there's been a couple other situations where she's entertained the idea of seeing another man. And so recently, like, another young man has reached out to her over social media. And again, someone that we know his family, we know him. And she's like, buddy, you got to talk to my dad. And he's coming to church this Sunday. I remember him from when he was a little bitty kid, but like, I haven't seen this kid in probably 15 years.
Wow.
And the introduction is going to be at church on Sunday. That's where we're going to.
Oh, he's scared to death.
He better be. But no, it's like, I don't want to intimidate these kids. Like, you hear the stories of dads that are like, yeah, I'm going to be sitting there cleaning my gun or, whatever. Like, now I did with my Annabelle's her name. With that daughter, this kid was a wrestler. And they'd been dating a couple weeks, and I was like, yeah, let's invite him to jiu-jitsu. And I choked him out like 8 times in 3 minutes. And so I was like, yeah, it probably wasn't the best thing to
hilarious.
do. So I don't recommend, choking out your daughter's boyfriend 8 times in 3 minutes. But yeah, so what I've done,
I can't believe he kept coming back. I would have gave up after about 2 or 3.
He's a wrestler. He thought he could get the best of him. He went to state. Like, he was a pretty dang good wrestler. But
yeah, wrestling's different than jiu-jitsu.
Way different. So what I did was I kind of came up with this framework. My friend and pastor, John Lovell, you can look him up, Warrior Poet. He wrote a book called The Warrior Poet Way. And in that, he talks about men becoming providers, protectors, leaders, and lovers. And so I use that framework for my daughters to help them assess and determine, like, okay, is this particular man what I'm looking for? And so I gave my daughters these questions of, like, when you have potential suitors, ask yourself these questions. Will this person provide and protect me? Provide for and protect me? Do they have the work ethic to do whatever it takes to provide? And if there was only enough for one of you to eat, would they give it all to you? Are they capable of...
Thank you for tuning in to the Four Fires podcast. I want to take just a second to let you know about one of the resources that the Four Fires tribe offers to help you take control of your life, take ownership, and build some authentic community to become more four-dimensional. It's called the 30-Day Ruck. It's a 30-day challenge to live four-dimensionally. You commit to weekly tasks, abstaining from a few things, and having a Zoom call with your facilitator, that's me, and the other men that are going through the ruck with you. It's a great way to encourage each other, meet some new guys that are trying to live four-dimensionally, and really hold ourselves accountable and commit to something and then keep our commitment to ourselves, to becoming a four-dimensional man. Visit our website, fourfires.com, to see more about the 30-Day Ruck and how you can sign up and reserve your spot today. Thanks, and let's get back to the episode.
Protecting you, and would they take a bullet for you if necessary? So, like, that's that whole, in that arena of provide and protect. And then, will they lead and love you? Are they a spiritual leader? Do they have respect for you? And will they lead you well? And then, will they pursue your heart in love? But more importantly, their relationship with Jesus over you. And so those are, like, the categories of provide, protect, lead, and love. And so I just give my daughters that framework to ask themselves the questions, like, would they do whatever it takes to provide? Would they do whatever it takes to protect? Will they lead you? Do they have the ability to lead you? Do you respect them and in their walk with God? And then will they love you? And we've had a lot of conversations around those things. Like, I look at my youngest older daughter, she's 16, and she's in a relationship with a young man who's a firefighter. And he's been in my life for well over a year. I've been mentoring him, and he's a great young man. I told him, I looked him in the eyes the other day, and I said, his name's Josh, and I said, Josh, I have no question about your ability to provide, protect, and lead my daughter. I said, but you still got a lot of opportunity to learn how to love and love well. And we've really spent some conversation around that, about how he needs to learn to love. Now, he's been through a lot of trauma in his life. And so I'm like, we need to work through some of this stuff and help you learn how to love and love well.
Protect, lead, and love.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much the framework that I've given my daughters to help them determine a good suitor. But then that same framework actually works for my boys. Like, hey, this is what you've got to become.
Yeah.
And so, how do I become, and like I said in a previous podcast, like, my main mantra or guiding principle is, how do I become the kind of man who has nothing to hide, nothing to fear, nothing to prove? But when you think about, how do you become the kind of person that I would want my daughter to marry, for my young men? Like, how do you become, my boys, like, how do you become the kind of young man that you think about, like, you would want to marry your sister? Mm-hmm. And so really, when you start with that phrase of asking yourself the question, how do I become? Then that gives you a framework of what to work towards. So.
That's so good. So in the provide, protect, lead, and love, I'm thinking about for myself. I've got a Word document that will go and add to every now and then of, like, I think the title of it is Guiding My Family. Mm-hmm. And just similar list that I'm, like, putting together of, like, Rices do this and Rices don't do this, or just different things, and that as I'm thinking about being a dad, the next couple of years, like, it's going to be time to take all the things that I'm learning and applying to my life and being able to lead my kids. And so I've thought a lot about, I grew up in a Christian household, so it was always like equally yoked. Like, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, don't even date someone who's not a follower of Jesus, because you definitely you don't want to marry someone who's not a follower of Jesus if you are. So, like, the spiritual aspect of it, of don't be unequally yoked. My parents did a phenomenal job of, like, that's the first question. If someone's interested in you and you're interested in them, the first question is, do you love Jesus? Are you a follower of Jesus? But then as I've grown and kind of become my own man, I'm starting my family, I'm seeing some different things that maybe I didn't have growing up. And so one of them is, like, finances. Like, what's your view on at least just talking about it with that person that maybe you might marry? Is like, what was money like for you growing up? Because I know that the stats say that one of the biggest reasons people get a divorce is money fights and money stress. Yeah. And so I'm just thinking, for me personally, I think it's important to name, hey, when you're, for my kids one day, if you're gonna date, if you're a girl, you're gonna date this guy, or if my son, you're gonna date this girl, you should be talking for sure about the spiritual stuff. What's your view on money? Are you like a crazy spender that let's just spend all of our money, or do you like to save? I think having those conversations are important. See that also, or are you like teaching your kids that? Of like, at least at some point you need to, that's an important thing to talk about. It's just like, specifically I'm talking about money. Are there any other areas in addition to these that you'll go deeper with your kids about you should be having these conversations?
Yeah, I think it's good to quantify those things and have a list of things that you need to talk about when things start getting serious.
Let's talk about these, but when things are getting serious.
Well, we don't want our children to date for the sake of dating. We don't even call it dating. The example with this young man that's reached out to my daughter in the last couple weeks, it's like, okay, you're not going on a date. You can get to be a friend first. We can meet at church. You can be a friend. At some point, you've got to have some of these conversations before we even talk about dating. He's got to talk to me. I'm going to ask some of these questions. What are your intentions with my daughter? If you just want to date her, this isn't a game. Like,
this is real life stuff.
Yeah, like if you can't look me in the eyes and say I would want to marry your daughter if things work out, and I would committed to providing, protecting, and leading and loving her. Now, again, I can't expect every 18-year-old kid to be that mature.
I wasn't. Good Lord, I wasn't.
But like I can see through some of the fluff, you know. Like, one of my issues with this kid right now is like he's, you know, there's a lot of pictures of him taking pictures of himself in the mirror, you know. He's a pretty buff kid, you know. And I'm just like, that's pretty vain. But I'm going to look past that initially. Because, if I'd have had a phone and a mirror to stand in front of when I was that age, I might have done that. So I'm going to look past some of that. And I'm going to try to get to the core of who he is, right? But to your point, spiritually, it's a given. Like, we're not even in the category of anyone outside of a Jesus follower. Like, you got to at least profess to be a Christian. Now, there's a broad range of people who profess to be Christians, but as long as you fundamentally believe, then there's opportunity for growth and maturity and all of that. So that's a given. Equally yoked, 100%.
Yeah, spiritually. So, like, just what you don't have to be identical,
right?
Because there's so I'm a big, debt-free Dave Ramsey, anybody who's familiar with that. And so they talk about, like, hey guys, it's Jeff. Thanks for watching this episode of the Four Fires podcast. If you're interested in becoming more four-dimensional, the best way, hands down, for you to do that is to start a Four Fires small group. Real life change always happens when we build authentic community and we're challenging each other, just like the Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. If you want encouragement, if you want accountability, if you want deeper friendships with some men in your life, a Four Fires small group is your next step. Visit our website to see more information, watch the Session 1 video to see if it really resonates with you and if it's something that you want to lead a group of men through. Fill out the application, and I would love to talk with you and provide you and the men in your group with all of the resources and the tools that you need to be equipped and empowered to start this small group and to become the four-dimensional man that God created you to be. I look forward to hearing from you, and until then, let's get back to the episode. There's free spirits, and there's nerds. So like I'm a nerd, my wife's a free spirit, she's a saver, I'm a spender. So we're different, but you can have the same philosophy on finances. So the categories, it's like spirituals number one, and then I think you should talk about what are your views on finances, what kind of things would you like to build and accomplish together when you're thinking about marriage. I think you should talk about what are your political views, because I'm like, if you're polar opposites, it might be tough to marry somebody who's completely opposite of you. And then I feel like there was one more. Oh, parenting. Or just like, what's your view on family and parenting? Yeah. Because same thing, if you were polar opposites of like, we don't spank our kids, or you're like, we do, then that's just going to be like. Okay,
I don't even know that I've gotten to that place yet with encouraging my kids to have those conversations. I think money is one of those things that my kids have caught. More than taught, they've caught. They understand how
your daughters are running the business.
Yeah, like entrepreneurial. I have taught them, but it's been through practical stuff. Like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and helping them manage a business and that sort of thing. This has been helpful to me because I'm thinking, okay, I really need to encourage my kids to start thinking about having those money conversations, and then having the parenting conversation. That I think we've talked about that for sure, because we're definitely believers in you don't spare the rod. Yeah, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child.
Spoil the child, yeah.
Yeah. So and my kids have grown up that way, and they realize like, hey, we're good. Like, we see spoiled brats around us, and we don't want to be like that. And we're grateful that our parents raised us the way they did. Right. And so, that's something that we need. But to your point too, like children, you need to talk about how many kids do you want to have. Like, if one was like, I don't want to have any kids, and the other one's like, I want to have a bunch of kids, like,
it's just all right. Well, let's talk about it. Yeah, clearly we have two different views, and I'm not saying if you do have a disagreement, it's like chopping block. You're gone, but it's like, well, we need to have that conversation and recognizing really the importance of it. Yeah. Hey, I love you. I think I want to marry you, but we definitely need to talk about this. Yeah. If we're totally in a disagreement on how we're going to handle money. Yeah.
Well, one of the other areas that my kids have really brought to me as things that they are talking with about their potential future mate is goals and dreams.
Yeah.
And, like those have to somewhat align. Mm-hmm. So my daughter, who is in a relationship with Pedro in Brazil, like they both want to travel a lot. Well, okay, he speaks 4 languages. Like, you can pretty much cover like 80% of the world with French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Like, think about like the only place you can't go and function very well is Germany. And Asia, like China and Japan. But everywhere else, you're good.
4 languages or 5, whatever it is. Why not learn Chinese? And then you can go to Asia.
Exactly. So, and so that just really fits well together for them. Like, they both want to travel. They both want to have, like, so she's going to study English as a second language. She's planning on, like, teaching English, virtually through, because now we have that ability through Zoom and stuff like that. I mean, she can do that from anywhere.
Travel and teach.
Yep. She can do that from anywhere. So those are aligned in their goals. And
what are you trying to build? Yep. Because you are 2 and you become 1.
Yep.
And they do have to be aligned.
And then like my second daughter, she's very ministry minded. And so like she really wants to help younger girls, find their way and not get caught up in the worldly ways of things. And so she's looking for a guy that is somewhat ministry minded and has that same mindset of aligning with purpose and vision and dreams of helping other people grow in their faith. And then the third one down, she's super creative and just off the chart artistic, and she needs someone that's going to love and support her in that. And that's something that goals and purpose, drivenness, those kind of things are other things that you definitely need to talk about.
Yeah. So. Well, I think in my mind, to sum it all up, is I'm hearing you say that you are extremely present with your kids and you are not passive with your kids. And that's what I got out of this conversation. Is I think in our last one we did about, well, I can't remember if you said it at the beginning of this podcast or the one we did about the 30-day ruck, about you said something and you were like, that's a lazy approach.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about
lazy approach to parenting,
being a parent, being a dad, I don't want to be a lazy approach where it's like, well, I'm working out, like my kids, they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And that is not how the role of the father is supposed to be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think God has such a higher calling for us as men than to have kids and like, well, they just run around and do whatever they want. And
I mean, passivity is the original sin, right?
That's so good.
It is. It's like when you go all the way back to Genesis, that is the original sin of man, passivity, because it was like she took of the fruit, and it says
Adam was with her.
Yeah, he's like, all right, I'm
elbow to elbow.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let her do it, right? And that was passivity. That was his original sin. Hers was different. Hers was reaching for control. And so, when you look at what is the greatest, threat to my girls are like anti-feminist. Like it's wild. Right. But they are like anti-feminism.
Okay.
And they're girls, right? And so it's because that reach for control is a woman's greatest opportunity for sin.
Yeah.
And then man's, passivity is his greatest opportunity for sin.
I believe that when a male and a female are doing what God tells us to do, we do see the beauty in it. So you're saying your daughters see the beauty in the quote unquote traditional, the man leads, but that only works. They only see that beauty because you're giving a great example of what it looks like when a man leads in a godly way.
Yep.
I think the reason for the feminist movement is because men have been weak and passive and not leading. And so it's kind of forced females to be like, well, I've got to take charge because this bum over here is not doing anything.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful that your daughters feel that way. And I think it's because of all the work that you've done to be a good leader. So good on you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. By the grace of God.
Yeah.
So
really good. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. Guys, if you are interested in getting more connected or taking a next step on your Four Fires journey, keep listening to all of our podcast episodes that we're releasing each week. And then I really encourage you to visit our website and click the link to join the Four Fires Tribe. The Four Fires Tribe is our online community where you get access. It's free. You get access to all of the Four Fires resources and our upcoming event dates. And then it's a way for you to actually potentially get connected with a guy like Zach and have a conversation, because it's an online platform. We're all on there, and you can comment and post stuff and even reach out to people individually. So I encourage you to go check out the Four Fires Tribe and get connected on a deeper level with the Four Fires Army. So, Zach, again, thank you so much for your time.
It's an honor.
Guys, as always, live intentionally, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Four Fires Podcast.